Hello and welcome to the Created to Create show. Today I have the beautiful Belinda with me. Welcome to the show, Belinda.
Thank you, Michelle.
Let's get straight into it. Where did you first start writing? Tell me about your journey into becoming a writer.
Well, I loved the written word from very, very young. My mother used to read stories to me at night, bedtime stories. She read them with all the voices, and I used to sit up on the back of the lounge and brush her hair while she did it. And I learnt to read that way because I would be following along and I learnt to read. And I think all of my siblings also learnt to read that way. So parents out there, it's very important that you read to your children at bedtime and that you do the voices and that you position yourself so that they can see the page because then they're going to pick up and learn how to read as well, which is very nifty. And I always wanted to write novels and I wrote my first one at about 8 years old. Oddly enough, it was a romance novel, which is a bit strange at 8. But my mother didn't have much time to sit and read novels because she had 5 kids. And when we went on camping holidays, she would go over to the book exchange and get some 20-cent romance novels because that was her time for having the time to just sit and read. And I would pick them up after her. So romance novels was one of the first. One of the first types of novels that I read. So that was what I wrote. I don't actually remember what happened in it, but somebody caught a plane to somewhere, and that was very.
So what are you working on at the moment, Belinda?
I'm writing the Wild Crimes mysteries, which are crime novels, mainstream crime novels set in gorgeous wild places in Australia and New Zealand. And the one that's underway at this moment is working title Scorched Earth. It's set in the Australian desert where a bunch of doomsday preppers collide with some luxury resort owners. And I've actually just been on a research trip to Coober Pedy in South Australia, which is far out in the whoops, to do some location research. And particularly, I wanted Coober Pedy because they have about half of the town's population lives underground. And I wanted, my stories set with people living underground. So I needed lots of ideas and inspiration for how you could construct different forms of dwellings and, even things like a luxury swimming pool underground or bigger spaces, different kinds of tunneling and construction. And so I'm full to the brim at the moment with how you build houses underground. If
Uh-huh.
you need to know, come to me.
Okay, I'll remember that for the future. So do you feel you've received all the research that you needed to while you were there? Have you?
You always want more. Like I was there for a whole week. I think, most people stay a day or two in Coober Pedy. Nobody stays for a whole week, but I did. And I got to meet lots of people in coobs, as we locals call it. And yeah, I got to meet a lot of people and talk about a lot of things. And yet there were just ones on my list that I couldn't get to. It's amazing how yeah, it's amazing how it can be not nearly long enough, even though it's quite a long time.
Mm,
So, yeah.
mm. I had the privilege of visiting Kupiti in high school. I did a
Oh, did
big
you?
bus trip out to Uluru, then down through Adelaide. Yeah, so we went through Kupiti, and I think we stayed one night. I can't
Yes.
recall. It was a long time ago, but yeah,
Yes.
wasn't a lot there that I remember.
I had some locals. Well, it doesn't look like much. It's interesting because so much of it is underground and it's
Underground.
a very unusual looking town when you drive into it because it's kind of a cross between, I don't know, a desert and there's been a lot of movies shot there, so it's a bit of an abandoned movie set. There's all these different movie props. There's a flying saucer, there's a spaceship, there's all these different signs and things. There's stuff everywhere. I think one of the Mad Max movies was shot there, and all these other ones as well, because it's a great location for end of the world stuff. And there's so much junk. Like
Mm.
so many, you think, oh, this must be the wrecking yard where you go and get parts for your car. But no, every second front yard is a wrecking yard, and they keep all the things because everything's useful. It was
Okay.
very, very interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And they're just great people. Really
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. How many people are there? Is it a big town? Is it
It's
small?
about 2,000, I
Oh,
think.
it's quite
Mm,
small. Mm.
mm,
It's a little town.
mm.
I want to go back there again because I just have great memories of going to a church there and sleeping underground and yeah, got
Yeah,
to
and there's some
one day.
beautiful locations around it too, like out to the breakaways, which is just it's like the surface of the moon.
Mm.
Fascinating landscapes and
Mhm.
things. And we also saved up our pennies and went on a flight over Kaditanda Lake Eyre, which is full of water at the moment. So
Mm.
that's the massive, for those who are not from around here, that's the massive lake in the middle of Australia that's usually just a salt crust. And it
Mm.
is full of water at the moment. And
Wow.
I've got a photo of ducks. They
Duck
are
hunt.
just little black dots, but they are ducks. So, yes.
Very cool. Tell me how your personal journey has influenced your writing.
Well, it influences it all the time, and it's always shifting and changing, I suppose, as you would know yourself, Michelle, as you go through life and you experience different things. It's for a writer, it's all material, isn't it? It's there's all these experiences that we go through and sometimes difficult things, but it's all material. I was thinking about this to how being a journalist, because I was originally a journalist and I did a journalism degree, that helped in terms of the mechanics of writing, but it was also a barrier in some senses because having been a paid writer, it made me feel like it wasn't worth writing if I couldn't get paid for it. And as you know, when you start writing fiction, you really don't know if there's going to be money out there for it or not. And so I couldn't persuade myself to give myself the time to do it. And another thing that I did as a journalist was I tended to over explain things a little bit because my experience was in all that very clear nonfiction. When I started writing fiction, I at the beginning I tended to over explain, and I had to learn to pull back from that a bit and be ready to just hint sometimes, and to trust the reader, and let them figure out what was going on.
Mm.
So and also I've done a lot of work with a domestic violence charity with their publishing work, and so I've met a lot of people through that and heard about a lot of experiences, which has been really good for informing my villains
Uh-huh.
in my crime series,
Mm.
because you kind of think that the bad guy might come in with a swirling cape and sinister music, but often they come in so charming.
Mm.
Often
Yep.
some of
Yep.
the worst people in terms of behavior, they start off being really, really charming.
Hmm.
And that was fabulous for me because it just gave a little bit of an extra tilt to my villains. I had been writing them a bit too much with the swirling cape. So people would know, almost from the first time I appeared on the page, this is the bad guy.
Mm.
But I managed to make them a little bit more subtle and nuanced the
Mhm.
more that I learnt and encountered people. So that was
Mhm.
good.
Mm. Very cool. Tell me, what's a lie that you've had to unlearn since has it changed, I guess? Was it when you went from being a journalist to fiction writing? Is there something changed there, or just is it something in general?
There's a lot of things that have changed, but I think probably one of the biggest lies that comes to my mind is that idea that you can't write unless you're inspired.
Mm.
And it's almost, that idea of the muse that people talk about. Oh, my muse wasn't working today, and that comes from, I don't know, Greek mythology and stuff, which you and I aren't really accessing. But we still sometimes have that idea that I've got to be inspired and it's got to be flowing or it won't be any good.
Mm.
And I always remember hearing someone in an interview and she said, you know what, I couldn't tell the difference. When I looked back at my work later, the stuff that I had written when I was really in the flow and the stuff that I had written when I was just working so hard to get a word out, I couldn't tell which bit was which. And so I felt a bit challenged by that and I started doing that 5 a.m. writers thing, and it was blood from a stone. I do not write well at 5 a.m. I'm not saying by this that we should all be writing at 5 a.m. because, in fact, I no longer write at 5 a.m. because it was bad for me. But when I looked back later, because I could write maybe, I would do an hour at 5 a.m. and I could write maybe 300 or 400 words. And
Mhm.
if I did an hour at 7:30 at night after dinner, I could write anything up to 1,000 words.
Mhm.
And it felt easier because my brain works better at that time. But also, I'm a bit of a binge writer, so I'll get into the flow and I'll write for days and get lots done. But also, those little bits that are hard to produce, when I look back at the work later, I can't tell. I can't tell
Ah,
which phase I was in when I wrote the different things.
mm,
So the feeling like you have to be in the flow and you have to be inspired and you have to be on fire, it's not true. You can actually still write. Mm.
mm. Yeah. And I think for me, that window changed. I used to be a night writer and now I'm a morning writer. So allowing yourself to find the time of day that works for you and move into it.
And experiment with it.
Mm.
Give it a try. Try the 5 a.m. Writers Club, or try the
Or 6
7:30
a.m.
p.m.
5
or
a.m. is way too early.
or try or try writing in the, when you're waiting in. I've heard of people writing in the queue when they're waiting to pick up their kids, or writing when their kids are playing football, and all kinds of things that people
I quite
do.
like riding on a cruise late
Oh,
at night
yes.
when
I
the
could
music's playing.
I can one thoroughly endorse that. I think we need to have a writer's cruise, which is all about
Let's
um,
do it.
yes, we go somewhere fabulous. We get off in the daytime, have a little wander around the town, and then we go back on board and we write. But
Yes.
you've got to have a balcony cabin though,
Oh, I
so
don't
you
need
can
one.
sit on the balcony and
Can have
and
one. That's
and
okay. I'll let you have one.
have the fresh air.
It's on. We're going to do the Riders Cruise, people.
Yes. I did
It'll
do
be
that once back in the day, not for a long time, but and it was good.
fun. Have you ever felt judged for what you'd write now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Uh, I have written Bible devotionals over many years for Scripture Union in the UK. I used to write for their Closer to God series of Bible reading notes, and that always felt very worthy work. And I didn't have any trouble justifying the time that I had to spend working on that, even though it didn't pay very well. But when I really wanted to write crime novels, and I wanted to write mainstream crime novels, not Christian crime novels where there's quotes from the Bible and everybody's going to Bible study and all of that sort of stuff, which are good books, but it's just not what I wanted to write. I wanted to write mainstream novels with what I call grace notes, little hints of the kingdom. In my case, a lot of those come through. I have two continuing characters. One of them is she's probably the main character. She's an atheist. She's pro-abortion. She's a lot of awkward things.
Mhm.
And the man who is they're kind of in love, but it's not working. Do you know what I mean? And the
Mhm.
man is a Christian, a good Christian, going to Bible college. And so I can use him to bring in some interesting things. He's flawed. He does some unfortunate things at times, and he struggles with the things that they find themselves in the midst of. They're both journalists, and so they're making documentaries together.
Right.
So, something bad always ends up happening when they go to make a documentary. It's a bit like Midsummer Murders or Murder She Wrote, where it's like, oh, don't go to that town,
Mm.
don't follow these people. But
Mm.
yes, and I found that some some fellow Christians do not understand at all that I write crime novels of any kind. Why
Mm.
would you be writing that? Because they're not people who read those sorts of things and they don't understand at all why anyone would want to. And then there's the ones who disapprove because I'm not writing Christian crime novels. I'm writing mainstream crime novels with some difficult issues at times. But it's what I feel called to write. I think partly from my journalism background myself, I came up against a lot of things in the world. There's a lot of things in the world, Michelle.
There is.
And story, you know yourself, story is a way that we can approach a lot of these things that are going on in human life. And there are people out there who would never pick up a Christian crime novel, but
Mm.
they might pick up mine. I've had some really wonderful feedback. One of the things my mother said to me was, some people will never get it, but missionaries will often get it, what you're trying to do, because they're often out, they're like tent making, if you like. They might be doing medical work or something in another culture. They've had to not just go in as ministers, they've got to go in and be real people, and just influence people's lives in small ways. But there was a woman who was the working in an emergency department in a country town in Australia, and she said she loved my books because she could give them to her workmates and they would read them because they weren't Christian books, and
Mm.
it gave her the opportunity to start conversations with people. And you can imagine how my little heart fluttered with that kind of feedback, because that is exactly what I'm trying, however feebly, to do with my writing.
I love that. Yeah. And it takes, everyone needs a specific voice to be spoken or to read before they're going to open their eyes to the possibilities of a
Yes.
loving God. And if it doesn't come in a format that works for them, yeah, what if?
And
What if
I
your
see it
books
as a
are?
team effort too. Like
Mm,
there's the ones who are writing for the people who are further from the kingdom.
hmm
And they might, it's like a little bucket brigade or something. They might kind of nudge them a little bit closer. And then the next ones come in and they nudge them a little bit closer. And then you've got the ones that are for those who are already believers or very close to believers and who want some spiritual nourishment, some deeper spiritual nourishment. Even in their fiction, they enjoy that. And I do enjoy, I read mainstream crime novels, but I also enjoy reading some of the Christian fiction that's out there. I find sometimes the way that they bring through things just gives me a little bit of refreshment and a little bit of renewed hope and purpose. And so I think there's a place for all of those things and for all of us to work together instead of pointing at each other and saying, no, you're doing the wrong thing. Or, we've got to, I think we've got to not quench the spirit. If God
I agree.
chooses to do something in a certain way through a certain person, so um, I'm very slow to judge what another person is writing these days. I kind of just step back a little bit and say, God, what are you doing here? What do you want? Is it something that I don't understand?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, we all have our place, and if we write where we're called to write and stick with it and not listen to the push and pull of the world or the people
Yeah.
around us. Mm.
Yeah, and sometimes like love them, but sometimes the Christians can be very toxic towards each other.
Forget to be nice sometimes. Be nice.
Yeah, yeah.
We met in Brisbane at one of the showcase events. And so, community for me is really big. Tell me about the writing community for you.
Totally. I think it's just wonderful when we can get together and support one another. One of my really favorite things about writers helping writers is beta reading, or beta reading, some people pronounce it, where you give useful feedback to one another. And that was something I started working on, quite a few years ago now. I first discovered it, I think, as an idea on a blog way back when I was working on my first crime novel. I started working on how to use it and make it work well, because there were lots of people saying they got feedback from other writers that was a bit toxic. And I'm as well as being a writer, I'm also a book editor and a book coach and a self-publishing consultant. And one of the things that I see happen is, especially with new writers, they get feedback and they just do what the other person says, which is not a good thing, because then you're losing your voice and you're writing the book that that person would have written, not the book that you were created to write. So but I think beta reading, when you get feedback from, like particularly with my first novels, I got about 5 or 6 different people to give me some feedback, and then you can get some balance in it. But I found that really, really positive, and it made me feel less alone.
Yeah,
in the writing process because it's very solitary, isn't it?
very.
But connecting with people as beta readers. And the other thing that's turned out to be really good is Gracewriters, which is a group that I founded, gosh, back in 2017, but it didn't really take off until the pandemic.
Mm.
And we started having online meetings because all the people who could never have managed a Zoom meeting before suddenly could because there was no other way to meet people for a while there. I don't know if you remember that. It's a funny world, isn't it? But we started meeting with people from around the world, and Grace Writers is for Christians who write for the mainstream with grace notes. Um, Basically just to give one another a bit of support when we're feeling a little bit like maybe we're doing the wrong thing or we've missed what that calling is, and we're meeting monthly. We've got an online forum, uh, we've got a website, and it just is. I've found that so nourishing to be able to meet with these people. We've really become friends around the world over the past 4 or 5 years. Gosh, must be getting on for it's at least 5 years now. So yeah, it's been a real blessing.
Yeah. And I've just jumped into that. I've been to the last two Zooms and yeah, they've been great. I
It's
really
been
appreciate
lovely to have you. It's just a very warm
it. It
kind
is.
of a conversation. Everybody's very supportive, and we get straight into, the foundations of everything. We're not afraid to discuss things about writing and about life and just give each other support and encouragement. They're such a wonderful group.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Thank you for joining me today. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, now's a really good time. Share this with a friend. And what words of wisdom would you like to leave our listeners today, Belinda?
For the writers out there, really protect your voice. Protect and develop and nourish your unique voice because you were made the person that you specifically are, who is different to every other person who ever walked this earth. You were made that way for a reason, and you need to be you and your voice, not someone else's.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes, you were created unique, created in the image of a heavenly Father, and you're created to create. So get out
Yes.
there and create.